Morning.
Good morning. Okay, we're gonna get a hard stop right at 9 o'clock. So get that link ready for bold so you can pop right from this one to that one. I'm gonna jump right into the buyer consultation, and tomorrow we will do kind of a role play on the buyer presentation as well. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping. I will be available in office and on Zoom from 12:30 to 1:30 today for some office hours. If you need me, if you want to chat about anything in particular, if you have a training issue, a coaching issue, a personal issue, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here. Okay.
What time did you say?
That is from 12:30 to 1:30. I only say that that's like specific time that I've blocked out the rest of the world and I will be totally available. But just to remind everyone, if you got a question, pop it in the group, send it to me or Candace directly. If it is particularly urgent, maybe put like urgent right next to it so it catches more eyes and hopefully we get a quicker response. Um, we're more than happy to help you guys. Okay, so but I will be available specific for you guys from 12:30 to 1:30 today. Okay. Okay. Hello. Let's talk about buyer presentation. Okay. You're going to notice there's going to be a lot of similarities from the seller presentation to the buyer presentation. Okay. And the overall theme is that it is not designed around telling the listener, the prospect, how great you are, right? You will share, that will be kind of translated to them as you are kind of walking them through the various kind of stages of this discussion, right? They will see your professionalism, your experience, your care, all that stuff. They will see it as you're going through this process, okay? So just like the seller presentation, oh, let me back up. Many of us will skip the buyer presentation, okay? Meaning you have an opportunity to kind of set a professional tone and kind of state the expectations and state kind of how the process works and give them some education on the process. And many of us get a call that says, hey, I want to come show me 123 Hill Street today at 3. And you're like, okay. And then you're trying to kind of explain what a buyer brokerage agreement is and a due diligence period is and all that stuff while they're paying attention to the home, walking up and down the stairs. Okay, so I'm going to encourage the better you get and the more thorough you are at the buyer consultation, the easier this process will be 100% of the time. Okay, if you have to, you can do it maybe after the first house that you show or after the end of the day, so to speak, right? When you're out showing for the first home. That would be my second choice by far. Okay. And just a quick note on safety. There's a lot of crazy people out there, y'all. And there unfortunately has been some tragic stuff that's happened to people in the real estate community. And you just got to be really careful. Many of us have a subscription to a service called Forewarn, FOREWARN.com. It's an app and it allows you to search for people for their records, like if they have a criminal history or arrest history or these kind of things. I'm not saying you shouldn't work with people that have been arrested. I'm saying you should probably pass on people that just got out of jail for sexual assault, right? And we've had cases in this office where an agent has called me and said, this doesn't feel right. Can you look into this? Turns out they just got out of jail. Or it turns out they have a rap sheet a mile long.
And I just want to add one thing. Make sure we used to get the driver's license of the people that we were going to work with, and we'd leave that with our broker. But make sure that there's somebody that knows who you're going to meet, what their name is, and also what homes you're going to go see, so that they know your itinerary. Just as a hopefully it never comes up, but just as a safety, so somebody knows where you are.
100%. And if you are meeting somebody for the first time, and it doesn't feel right, it probably doesn't feel right for a reason. So please just take an extra second and allow us to try to do a little bit of behind the scenes research and make sure that nothing's fishy, okay? Do not meet somebody for the first time at night and these kind of things. And just for the ladies, make sure, like, how do I say this? Uh, you never park like first in the driveway and let them park behind you, right? Like park on the side of the street so that you're not blocked in, right? If you're wearing high heels and things like that, just be aware that like I don't recommend that. Um, but I hate to scare you guys, but crazy things have happened before, right? You just want to put yourself in a position where it's not compromising. Okay,
And
Candace, do you want to add to that?
yeah, and don't let somebody follow you into the door or follow you into the rooms. You follow them.
Right. Like if you're going down the stairs,
Mhm.
let them go first and you follow them down the stairs, right? Or up the stairs or something like that. Okay.
And just on the other note, there are so many wonderful people that you'll work with. So
Yeah.
this is like, here's one extreme of, let me see if I get my hands showing. Here on the left side, there's an extreme of somebody who's just so nice, they're going to take you to dinner. And on the other extreme is the person you've got to be careful of. And most people are going to be somewhere in the middle. And I mean, they're going to be
99
on
and that 99.9% of them are going to be in the middle.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be doing you guys justice if I didn't bring this up.
exactly.
All right, so buyer presentation is about to start. Okay, first thing that we do when we sit down with the buyer is we thank them, right? Just like the seller. Hey, there's a lot of agents that you could be meeting with, and I just want to share my gratitude to you for you giving me the opportunity to interview for this role. It's a big choice, and I'm honored to be considered for this, right? So meanwhile, if they're interviewing other agents and they're not setting like a professional tone like this, again, like we said before, you see it's a big dichotomy and you see, hey, this guy is taking it seriously, this guy's not taking it seriously, right? So everything you do, you're being evaluated on. Okay, so we make sure that we thank them, we express our gratitude. The next thing is we move into the conversation about their experience, right? Share with me. My goal is to make this just an absolute 5-star, 10 plus experience for you. Okay. Now, can you help me understand what is the most important thing that needs to happen in this transaction or in this, relationship for you to feel exactly that? Okay. And they answer that question. And if you need to, ask more specifically, right? So if they say, well, I just want to make sure that you communicate with me. Okay, communication means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Help me understand what great communication means, or 10 plus experience communication means to you, right? So if they say something vague, you got to push them a little bit so that you can get exactly what they mean by that. Don't let them say something vague and then just move on, because you'll give them vague results if you're lucky and it's not going to work. Okay. So why is that important to you, or what is important to you about that? Okay. If they've bought and sold a bunch of times, you might ask the question, so can you share with me some experience? What are some of your favorite experiences working with realtors, right? What are some of the disappointments that you've experienced working with realtors, right? And they're basically going to be telling you exactly how to serve them, right? And by the way, you should be evaluating whether this is reasonable, right? If they say, hey, I want to call on the hour every hour. Hey, every new listing, I want you to write a 3-page report on why it may or may not be a fit for me. I'm going to tell them to take a hike, right? But if they respond in a way that is reasonable, and most stuff is reasonable, then I'm gonna make a note of it, and that's how I'm gonna service them. Does that make sense? Okay. So what is the experience going to be? How do I give you a 10 plus experience? Okay. Then we're going to review the intake page. Okay. The intake page is like this document here. It's basically just the informational page that you okay, so it's the informational page that you were jotting down when you kind of took the initial call, and you're asking the basic questions. So these are questions like, how soon would you like to be in your home? How long have you been looking seriously? Have you seen any homes or areas that you like? I'm going to share this with you in just a second. Here it is, right? here. What's important to you about buying a home right now? Right? Are they running away from something? Are they running to something? Right? Are they running away from a bad area or bully at their kid's school? Or are they moving towards like a job for commute's sake? Like what's driving their decision to move? Right? Um, you know, have you interviewed any other buyer's agents? How much money do you have set aside for a down payment or for closing cost? Right? Have you already started working with a mortgage professional? Right? And if so, what have you learned? What type of loan will you be getting, or do you qualify for? What's the budget, down payment? Any unique situations that I need to be aware of? Any of that kind of thing. Okay. If they do not have a relationship with a lender, or generally if they mention a lender that is, how do I say this? Generally, what I have found is the bigger the bank, the lousier the service. And I've also found that if the lender is an online lender, it's tough to get a hold of them sometimes. And they oftentimes do not have the system set up to execute on all the contingencies and the timeframes that we're pushed to get them done in today's market. So if you're unfamiliar with the lender that they want to work with, immediately you should get in touch with them.
Lost you, Bill.
Oh, here I am. If they say, hey, I'm working with George over at blah, blah, blah mortgage, say, oh, awesome. Do you mind introducing me to George? I've not worked with him before. And you call him and say, hey, just checking in. I'm Bill. I'm gonna be working with George. We got a client in common. I just want to, double check. I know everything about how your process works. How long does it take you to close? What's the deal with appraisals? How far in the process have you and George gotten? I'm not asking for George's credit score. I just want to know whether you have any concerns about whether George is going to get this loan or not. Make sense? So that's the case with all relationships. If you don't have a relationship with them, your primary job is to go get a relationship with them, right? Because you are the choreographer of all of the different people that are in the transaction. Okay. Do you have a home to sell before you close on your next home, or are you currently in a lease? And if so, when does that end? Right. Besides you, are there any other decision makers? Right. Ideally, you would have asked a lot of these questions beforehand, so you can make sure that all the decision makers are present when you're giving this presentation. Nothing worse than presenting to the wife when the husband's the decision maker, or vice versa. Okay. Tell me a little bit about what you're looking for. She says, I want a fenced yard. Whatever they say, if it's vague, ask for details. I want a big backyard. What does a big backyard mean to you? I want an open floor plan. Can you describe that in a little bit more detail, please? Does that mean that the family room opens to the kitchen? Does that mean something different? And then you want to, as you're asking about what they're looking for, you want to try to identify which of these things, like let's say they want a porch or something, like a screened-in porch, right? So if we were to find the perfect home and if it did not have a screened-in porch, would you consider moving forward? They say no. So you must have a screened-in porch at your home. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Do not take them to any home that doesn't have a screened-in porch. Not only are you wasting time, but you're proving that you're not listening. Right? So make sure that you you're really clear on what are the specific factors that they must have, and what are the specific factors that they must not have. So for example, I want a basement. So is that you must have a basement, or you would like to have a basement? Just because I want to save you time. I want to make sure that I'm bringing you to the right homes. Make sense? Okay. Now, the next thing I would do is I would tell them a little bit. I placed it here when I was writing my notes, but you could probably place it in a lot of different places. And I would also generally say this is one of the very first things out of my mouth when I'm on the phone with them, way before the appointment, is I just want to give you two really important facts about the process. Okay, Michael, two things. Number one is any property that you happen to find on any website, okay, whether it's a new home, a resale, for sale by owner, If it's an expired listing, if you saw it on Zillow or whatever it is, this is a home that I can help you pursue. So rather than reaching out to the listing agent, who, by the way, has committed to representing the seller, right? I want you to reach out to me, and I'll get you any questions you want answered, and we'll get you into the building, into the home as soon as possible. Okay. So regardless of if you're, I'm sure you're doing some searching on your own, right? So just remember that if you call the name on the sign, they work for the other party. Okay. So I'm going to encourage you to call me first, and I'll take it over from there. Okay. If you happen to go into a new home community, you want to let them know immediately that you're represented. Okay. Hey, I'm working with Bill at Keller Williams. Here's his card. Right. So those are the primary things that I want them to know. Oh, and the other one is, just so you know, my commission is ultimately paid by the seller. So to have a full, to have a professional realtor represent you and walk you through this entire process is of no charge to you. Okay. So right off the bat, I want them to know I can help them with any house they find, and I'm basically free. Follow that? So when you're sitting with them again in person, you want to bring up those topics again. Okay, just to remind you, if you see anything on new home construction or anything in Zillow or whatever, is a home that I can help you pursue. And so the best way to reach me is by text or by email or whatever you want to say, and make sure that they have heard that. Follow me so far? Okay, great. Let's talk for a second about the process. So I want to make sure that you're nice and prepared, and there's never a time that you feel like you don't know what's happening next, right? Or you're worried about whether you're protected or not. Okay, so the process is somewhat where you describe, or not really somewhat, but that's where you describe the contingencies, right? So I'll set you up on an electronic search. You'll probably be doing some searching on your own. I'll be making some phone calls to try to find some unlisted property for you, right? We're both going to be doing our part to find the property. The majority of what I'm great at is making sure I get you the best terms and keeping the deal together all the way to the closing table. Okay, so don't be surprised if you're the one that finds the home. Okay, follow me? Because if they find the home and they weren't told that that's pretty typical, then they're going to think you're slacking. See what I'm saying? So don't be surprised if you find the home, right? Because you're looking, I'm looking, we're on the same team here. Follow me so far? Okay, so there's generally 3 contingencies involved in a, let me back up for a second. We're going to identify the home, right? We're going to run the numbers. We're going to make sure that the price is appropriate. I'm going to make sure that you and I review the data together so we get a really good idea of what an appropriate price should be, right? We'll look at the market history of the property. When was it listed? How long has it been listed? Have there been any price changes? These kind of things. So we really understand what an appropriate price is. I take care of putting together all the paperwork, and then we submit an offer. We'll go back and forth, and then we'll go binding. And about 30 days roughly from the time you go binding, that's when you'll close. Okay. And then I usually take that opportunity to explain the contingencies. Okay. Real quickly, the contingencies are due diligence period. Due diligence period is basically a free look period. You get the home under contract, and you get an opportunity. Typically, it is, let's say, 7 to 10 days, sometimes even less in this type of market, which I'll get to in a second. And that is your opportunity to do any inspections or research that you want to do to make sure this is the home you want to buy. Okay, so that list is very long, but let me throw out a couple of things that you might consider doing during that. Having a standard home inspection, having a pest control company come out and do a WDO inspection, a wood destroying organisms inspection. It's not just termites, there's a bunch of other beetles and these kind of things that could cause damage too, although it's not incredibly common. I would also consider having a radon test, radon gas test. I would also consider making sure that the commutes you're okay with the commutes, right? So don't drive from your new home in Lawrenceville to your work in Midtown for the first time the day after you bought the home, right? You should be making sure that that is part of your research along the way, okay? You should also check the crime reports in the neighborhood, right? Are there any sex offenders that live nearby, right? I'm not saying this stuff is bad. I'm just saying you need to be aware of it if you're going to be an educated consumer. Well, I'll help you gather the data. You're ultimately the one that will make the decision. Make sense? I had a buyer one time buy a home knowingly that we did the research and we found there was a sex offender like five homes down. And they ultimately made the decision to buy the home. And they moved like 3 or 4 years later, they made like 150 grand on the home, right? And the sex offender still lived there when they sold it. So it doesn't mean like the whole house, the whole neighborhood is, worth nothing. It's just something that you should be aware of. And depending on how strongly or you feel about it, will be based on whether you decide to move there or not. Make sense? Okay. The next by the way, during that due diligence period, you can leave for any reason. You can leave the contract for any reason, whether it's inspection related or not. Okay. And it's can be done unilaterally, and you would receive your earnest money back in full as long as it happens within the time period. Simultaneously, what's going to happen is you're going to make full loan application. If you happen to get a loan denial letter within a certain number of days, it's generally around 15 to 20 days now. That's the financing contingency. Then you could leave the contract without penalty. Okay, and simultaneously, we'll be ordering an appraisal to allow a third-party person to come in and just basically review the contract and make sure that the value is appropriate. Okay, if the appraisal value comes in below the contract sales price, then we would need to renegotiate or attempt to renegotiate the sales price. Okay, but these contingencies are in place to protect you so that you can, get the home under contract. So it's just for you now, and then do your research to make sure this is the appropriate property and all the terms are worked out. Okay, so then we move on to the market review. Okay, the market review is here's what's going on in our market right now. Okay, it's 61% of properties are selling with multiple offers. Okay, and you can break it down on the chart master slide like we showed yesterday. You're buying a home from, let's say, $399 to $500. What we're finding is homes that are selling for 101% of asking price in 3 days, right? 61%, according to this graph, and you should have it with you, are going at list price or above list price. If we were to find the perfect home for you, and you ultimately had to pay list price or over list price to secure it, how would you feel about that? Okay, is that salesy? No, that is clarification, right? If they were to say, no, I'm not paying list price, or I'm not paying definitely not paying over list price. Okay, well, we don't really have a realistic buyer here. You see what I'm saying? So we're testing them along the way to see how they're going to be able to participate in the market that we're in. Make sense? So I'm not suggesting you overpay, but we got to win, right? Now, here are some of the things that buyers oftentimes are being asked to do, and you could rattle off a few things, right? Make up appraisal gaps, bring extra down payment money, double, sometimes triple the earnest money deposit that you're used to considering, right? Closing quicker, bringing cash, releasing inspection contingencies or appraisal contingencies or financing contingencies. So you're not telling them all this stuff to scare them. It's just the reality of the marketplace, right? It's kind of like you want to let the guy know or the woman know, like, how are we going to be successful? And then you let them know, hey, I got you. I've done this before. We got a team behind us, right? If you're not comfortable taking certain risks, then we won't take them. But my job is to help you understand how to be successful. Any questions? Right? So you have the chart master slides just in case you need to bring them up. The ones that are most relevant for buyers, by the way, are many of the same ones that are relevant for sellers, right? Days on the market, number of homes that are going at or above list price, right? Median percentage of list price to sales price ratio. So if they want to offer 85% of list price, they should be shown that hasn't happened in a long, long time, right? Okay, next thing I would do is I would say, let me explain to you the buyer brokerage agreement, okay? And I'd have a blank copy of it. By the way, I know we like to do electronic signatures, but bring contracts with you. Bring an exclusive listing contract with you on a listing agreement or listing appointment. Same thing with buyer's agency agreement. If they're ready to sign it, sign it. You can upload the document. You don't say, oh, don't worry about it now, I'll send it to you. Get them to sign it. Okay. You explain the buyer brokerage agreement. Buyer brokerage agreement is basically a loyalty agreement. It essentially says that I represent you exclusively as my client, and it allows me to do things beyond what the state says are ministerial tasks. The way that I was always taught this was if you do not have the buyer brokerage agreements, if you do not have the buyer brokerage agreement signed, then that person is your customer. As a customer, the state of Georgia license law basically says that you should only be doing ministerial tasks for them. Ministerial tasks are basically things you can do with your hands and your feet, right? Letting them in the door, telling them what the tax records say, right? Yes, this home is in Milton High School District. It was listed on this day. It is priced at this. It's essentially all public information. The second they want you to start using your brain, you should have the buyer brokerage contract signed. That is like, what do you think the home is worth? What should we offer, right? What do you think about this property, right? That's a client privilege. This is the document that separates you from a customer to a client, okay? Now, keep in mind, it can be terminated by either party at any time without penalty, which is a relief. You should say that to them. Hey, just so you know, if you sign it and we're not getting along, you're not tied to me, right? You can leave. And vice versa. But according to the license law, this does need to be signed to ultimately protect you and serve you as a client. Okay. Now, I don't expect this is kind of the takeaway close, if you will, right? We just met. I hadn't showed you a single property. You probably think I'm a nice guy, but you don't know how hard I work yet. So I don't know. You might sign it, and you're more than happy to. But I want to earn your business. I intend to earn the business. So I'd like for you to take this home, read it through, let me know if you got any questions. And the next time we see each other, we'll chat about it. Does that sound good? Right? And don't expect them to sign it before you even meet them. Like, that's just not going to happen. Nobody's going to agree to work with you exclusively without even meeting you. Does that make sense? So remember, you're auditioning for the role to be hired. Okay. So I always I kind of treated it, I don't want to say it's informal, but I just didn't make that big of a deal about it. I said, here's some paperwork, take a look at it. I would expect you to, to see me in action a little bit, and I intend to earn your business. So please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk about it next time. Y'all see, like, you don't have to make such a big deal about it. Basically, every type of industry has paperwork, right? You don't even have to, you can't even get your a massage without getting paperwork, or a chiropractic adjustment without paperwork, or your windows cleaned without paperwork. There's paperwork everywhere. This is our paperwork. It's not that big of a deal. You see what I'm saying? If they're scared to sign the paperwork, what they're telling you is they're not sure that you haven't perhaps not proven enough to them that you're going to have a great experience. Make sense? So you got to ask them, hey, tell me a little bit more. Did I miss something? What are your concerns? Share with me, how I can be more helpful, whatever it is, right? The next thing is what happens next, right? So here's what will happen next. I'm going to set you up on a search. I'm going to, send you some listings. We'll go out and see them. Here's the way that's going to work. And then you close. You ready to get started? Any other questions that you need to ask before we get started? Right? And you do a little close to see if they're ready to commit to you. Okay. And then you just continue to follow up, right? And if they ghost you for a few days, which is typical, you just find a home that's kind of similar to what they talked about. And you send them maybe a video text or something, say, hey, I don't know if you caught this one, but 123 Smith Street just listed. I got an opening Thursday at 2 o'clock. Can I show it to you? Right? Try to find an excuse or a reason to get in front of them. Make sense? Okay, let's go to Bold. Tomorrow we'll kind of recap some of this, and we'll do a little role play too. Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.